Hello, I'm TrackerTD, and it's time for some games of the year. Well, 2017 is nearly over. For me, it's been a year characterised by incredibly naff personal circumstances, the world basically going to shit, and a lot of angry Sonic fans. So it's not been a great year particularly, but how about those video games? There were a lot of them, and a lot of damn good ones too. But which did I think were the best? Let's jump right in. A Zelda game on the TrackerTD Game of the Year list? What is this madness? I've never been particularly fond of the Zelda series. I didn't mind games like A Link to the Past and stuff, but Ocarina of Time actively puts me to sleep. Breath of the Wild, on the other hand, is a huge reinvention for the series, and it shows, in that I absolutely adore it. The game sees you on a quest to rescue Zelda, as you'd expect, but this time the quest is spread out across a beautiful, utterly gargantuan representation of Hyrule, moulded by nature and time. It's a stunning environment, and doesn't fall into the trap of several other open world games of being huge but devoid of content. There's basically something to do, a challenge to tackle, or items to find in every corner of this world, and it's rarely dragged down by some kind of attached tedium or other catch. The narrative spread out across the game isn't exactly anything new, but it serves its purpose well enough. The addition of voice acting to the series also gives me a stronger connection to these characters and the situations surrounding them, even if some of the English performances are a bit weak. Running around the open world gives a constant sense of wonder and improvisation, with battles or live interactions with NPCs happening at a moment's notice. Even when not actively fighting battles or carrying out objectives, the game can simply be relaxing to explore. This is all wrapped up with the amazing controls and wonderfully smooth combat system. The fact all of this can also be taken anywhere also makes it a great game for showcasing the potential of the Nintendo Switch. Honestly, it's really tough to explain just how good this game is without just telling folks to play it themselves, because it really does need to be experienced to be believed in many respects. Arguably the main dungeon design was somewhat simple compared to previous games, but given how said games bored me, I didn't really see this as a flaw. Really, the only major blemish I hold against Breath of the Wild is weapon durability being a pain in the arse, and the weather system causing considerable annoyance on occasion. Still, all in all, the atmosphere is superb, the controls feel tight and fun, it's a wonderful adventure with a range of ways to play, and a fantastic game.
You must save her, my daughter.
Not familiar with Persona, it's an RPG series spun off from the beloved Shin Megami Tensei franchise. Much like Puyo Puyo and Mado Monogatari though, Persona has gone on to eclipse the popularity of its original franchise, with Persona 5 being no different. It's a mix of dungeon crawling and living student life, with Persona 5's narrative centering around a group of young societal outcasts becoming phantom thieves who enter the supernatural metaverse to change the hearts of our souls. Anyone who knows me decently will attest to the fact I'm not particularly big on RPGs. The likes of Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door, a game held in sheer reverence by most video game fans, bores me to tears by the first boss. I didn't even get super far into Persona 4 when I played that. But Persona 5 had me engrossed with its constantly evolving plot, lovable characters, fine-tuned battle system, and sheer style. In particular, the style is simply incredible, with sleek design blending 2D and 3D assets seamlessly. The metaverse is constantly shifting to reflect the person whose heart you're stealing, and it leads to a magnificent amount of variety, not just in aesthetic design, but in area gimmicks and story beats. There's a lot of small quality of life gameplay changes made that push it above what I played with Persona 4 too. I've seen a lot of debate about how good the narrative and stuff is compared to other games, but regardless of comparisons, the game overall kept me engaged and threw me for a loop right up until the end. If all that wasn't enough, there's so much content here that managing your time becomes one hell of a challenge. What will you experience? When will you do certain tasks? Who will you befriend? There's so much variety available in how you play the game, increasing replay value immensely. The battle mechanics also give a great sense of progression, and the weakness system is rewarding to exploit to its full potential. There's no feeling quite like an all-out attack synced perfectly to the battle theme, last surprise. It'd be higher on this list, but I do feel it got a bit tedious towards the end. The last few dungeons weren't particularly fun to navigate. Still, all in all, Persona 5 is a magnificent achievement for the RPG genre, and well worth your time. I'm probably not the person to ask whether it's the best RPG ever made, but it's certainly the best I've ever played. It's also got the best soundtrack on this list, which is no small feat. I'd never played Yakuza before 0, so all I had to go off was extremely positive word of mouth and the odd Twitter post commenting on how crazy it all was. So, if anything, I expected something good, at the very least. Yakuza 0 isn't good. It's bloody incredible. The game sees the origins of series mainstays Kazuma Kiryu and Majima Goro, and the circumstances surrounding a mysteriously valuable empty lot. It's a surprisingly simple narrative at a glance, but the places I go and the things I do with it are simply fantastic. Zero's gameplay is pretty much the definition of fine-tuned. The city is very much alive, rich in things to do, side missions to pursue, and entire business operations to run. And of course, beating the ever-loving hell out of armies of street thugs, sharply dressed Yakuza sods, real estate gurus, and Daisaku bloody Kuze never ceases to be a good time. It's glamorously violent, but not in a deep or thought-provoking way. It's just fun to smash some virtual thugs against a wall, you know? Even with the over-the-top gameplay though, the game blends moments of bizarre comedy and gripping drama with expert precision. One minute I'll be laughing my arse off at Kiryu helping not Michael Jackson dance down the street, warding off zombies. And next, I'll be on the verge of tears because, oh god, Majima, I'm so sorry, you didn't deserve this. God damn it. And again, the amount of content is incredible. The main story is substantial enough, but you can become a real estate tycoon, run a successful club, break into bizarre cults and dismantle them from the inside with your fists, and most importantly, woo girls using Space Harrier skills. And the best part is many of these side missions ultimately result in more wanton violence, which may sound tedious, but it never really gets to that point. You're given great reasons to want to beat the ever-loving shit out of these people, and it's constantly satisfying. The game does draw out certain elements such as Kuze's constant refights, but in general you never feel like you're wasting time doing anything here. If anything, I suppose the weak link may be the graphics. It looks perfectly fine, but it's still very obviously a late PS3 game, merely upscaled for the PS4. Anywho, if you've never played a Yakuza game before, 0 is a fantastic jumping on point. It's been hailed as the best game in the franchise, even with the release of Yakuza 1's remake Kiwami in the West, and I can attest to that. The common line is, Yakuza is a Japanese GTA, but I really don't get that impression beyond very surface level comparisons. Yakuza 0 is its own wonderful thing, and a deeply satisfying experience I'd recommend to anyone with a PS4. Choosing the top 2 for this list was murder, because 2 games, and you likely know what they are, were absolutely battling it out for the ultimate Game of the Year proclamation. It was an insanely close race, both gave me a sense of sheer magic and wonder that I hadn't felt so strongly from either series in a surprisingly long time, but I can't just cop out and call it a draw. So number 2 is Super Mario Odyssey. Mario Odyssey feels like the most fresh, inventive game in the series since Sunshine, my first proper Mario game. At many points, it captured what I loved about that game directly, but in a far more refined manner. Mario feels fantastic to control, with the potential and versatility of his past sandbox incarnations restored, particularly with the addition of Cappy, who makes traversal feel fresh. That's before even considering the capture gimmick, which despite the inherent strangeness of Mario becoming a dinosaur, never feels out of place. It's certainly not just traditional Mario a la 3D World and to an extent Galaxy, but it feels cohesive in its own right, and I believe the inventiveness pays off beyond what those games did. The level design is also far better than my pre-release impressions gave it credit for. Even in the smaller kingdoms, there's plenty of unique challenges, objects to interact with, secrets to find. The game is perhaps a bit reliant on samey tasks like ground pounding the floor for moons, but for the most part the game rewards even the most out there exploration. Some of these moons are what some would consider obtuse, but there's nothing to stop folks using Talk To or the Hint Amiibos. There's ways of facilitating all kinds of players without it being as arguably shameless as the infamous Invincible Tanuki Leaf. Without spoiling anything, the game's finale is also simply the best of the entire series, and the post-game content is massively substantial in itself. Overall, Odyssey is a tightly focused experience, and an absolute victory for 3D platforms and just video games in general. Who says the single player experience is dead?
Spin the wheel, take a chance, every journey starts a new romance.
It should now be pretty obvious what my game of the year is, but before that, let's go through some honourable mentions. Crash Insane Trilogy was a great way to revisit the series. Crash 2 was one of the first games I ever played, and it was just as fun here as it was all those years ago. It did, however, suffer from some physics and collision oddities that I think ultimately keep it from a spot on the list. While I've admittedly not played it much, Tekken 7 puts Capcom's recent attempts to shame. It's beautiful, fluid, and has a good amount of content for casual players, and it's great fun with friends. The customization options, while oddly limited in some areas, also make for some great amusement. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe probably doesn't count for some given it's just a touched up Wii U port, but I think those very minor adjustments work far to its favour. Battle mode being returned to its former glory was very welcome, and especially with the return of Double Dash's maddeningly fun Bob-on battles, Mario Kart 8 is one of the most refined entries in the series. Waku Waku 7 is again just a touched up port to Switch, but the quality of the port is relatively impressive if not quite M2 standards, and he gets the nod just for being the first game I ever played on my Switch. That and having Arena. Arena's pretty great. In a world where F-Zero looks pretty damn dead, Fast RMX is a substitute that I feel exceeds it in some ways. It's a textbook example of doing more with less, as given it's essentially running on mobile hardware, it can easily stand shoulder to shoulder with titles on PS4 in terms of graphics and fluidity. 1080p 60fps is no mean feat, especially with the speed the game moves at. Speaking of speed... saw this coming? Probably. Sonic Mania is an experience, joy in its rawest form. The amount of effort, detail and love poured into every corner of this game is clear as day, not only from a place of appreciation for Sonic, but for Sega in general. The aesthetic is magnificently informed from the Sega Saturn's 2D powerhouse nature, with plenty of inspiration taken from Treasure's use of rotation and scaling effects for good measure. Even the game's 3D moments meticulously recreate GotY shading techniques and the aliased polygonal display of the Saturn with staggering accuracy. Beyond the emulation of past graphical capabilities, the actual art design of the game blends a CD-styled influence into levels that didn't even previously adhere to it, and the original levels feel wonderfully in tune with Sonic's world. The reuse of old stages doesn't even end up being much of a mark against the game, due to how most of them subvert expectations in ways that are fresh but make sense and remain cohesive with the original levels' concepts. In addition, it's all wonderfully animated, the characters are expressive, often in subtle but effective ways, and the environments are brought to life beautifully with sharp, colourful 32-bit pixel art. And mother of God, the soundtrack! The incredible remixes, reworkings and reimaginings of classic Sonic tunes suit the game down to a T. Loads. Metallic Madness Act 2 stands out as a particular favourite of mine, but Stardust Speedway has simply never sounded better, and if that wasn't all enough, the original compositions easily stand on the level of the original Sonic music. And that's all before talking about the gameplay itself, which is in my opinion the most important factor of any game. And in this regard, Mania is essentially perfect. The controls are tight, responsive, and the physics feel even more finely tuned than the original games. The level design is utterly sublime, expansive, and explorative, and rewarding skilled players with speed and shortcuts, not resorting to speed boosts every 10 seconds just for artificial thrills. Taking advantage of the level design, knowing when to jump on loops, using the all-new drop dash, gives the game a sense of speed unlike any classic Sonic game before it, while also having this speed be interwoven with fun, organic platforming sections that once again reward skilled play. In particular, the game just never feels cheap. The only real complaint I have to throw at Mania is that the boss design can feel rather weak, making you wait around a lot. The original games had ways to battle the boss at your own pace, and I think that should have been iterated on here. But still, overall, Mania is a wonderful package and comes in at a staggeringly low price for what you get. It's simply put the best Sonic game I've ever played, and I sincerely hope more games of this sort come along from the Mania team in future. Because after playing this, Sonic Team's efforts feel a bit forced. So yeah, those were my Game of the Years. Years of the Game. Games of the Year. If you're thinking something along the lines of, hey, where was this game? Then the likely answer is, I didn't get around to playing it near Automata, or I didn't actually find it very good. The moral of the story is, buy Sonic Mania with money. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next year, probably, maybe before the end of the year. Who knows, I never make videos. See you then.